know that a lot of experienced gardeners or farmers, they can look at the soil and say, this smells good, this looks black, right? It must be a good soil. But for contamination point of view, you can't see, you can look. It's there. You have to test it using instrumentation. A lot of soil looks really good, but they are very contaminated. So a lot of soil doesn't look that good, but it's not contaminated. So you can't, sometimes it's very hard to judge based on the look. There are various different physical and chemical parameters that we do to analyze the soil depending on the needs of the gardeners. So most of the time we can recommend some basic parameters like pH and salt content, organic content, and the soil texture, and also the nutrients, basic nutrients in the soil. So these are the 5, very basic things we suggest people to test. We sometimes, when people need, we help them to test a bunch of different heavy metals. Lead contamination is the main contamination for urban soils. So we do a lot of samples. Most of the samples we do the lead analysis, especially for urban backyards or community gardens. There's so much soil that's contaminated. So there's very limited solution. So recently we have been working with New York City Office of Environment Mediation, and we have been working on called a Clean Soil Bank program. And the idea is to combine the clean sediments, which is available from these construction sites, a lot of them. And then the sediment does not have organics or nutrients. So we'll mix up with some compost, which is from the food waste or other organic sources, and mix with the compost, and then generating called engineered soil, which is new soil, which can be placed on top of the contaminated soil and serve as a growth medium for plants. We did a study last year, 2 years ago, looking at experimenting at the several community gardens and actually grow some crops there, and looked at the soil property changes, contaminant levels, kind of thing. Everything seems to be meeting the expectations for growing crops in these soils. So we're continuously monitoring them for the long term. We just published a few papers on that subject actually. Mayor's office is very excited and they want everybody know about it. New York City Urban Soil Institute is a collaboration between government, academia, and semi-government agencies. And what we really want to do is to make urban soils stand out, more people to know about urban soils, and make New York City Urban Soil Institute as one of the one-stop shop for all the people who need to know soil, need to get to test the soil, need information about the soil. So one-stop shop for urban soils. So we're really setting up one example for other cities, so people can have USI, Philadelphia, USI, anywhere essentially. So it's been 9 years now. I think we have been getting a lot of samples, not only from the gardeners, regular gardeners, but also now getting more samples from Parks Department, from NYCHA, from other community organizations that doing more organized soil testing, organized understanding of the soils, what they can do, involving more compost and other things. So it's been expanding and evolving, and at one point we felt like that we need to team up with people. We established a lab and started to offer testing services to people. So people have been starting to send in soil samples, and we test for lead and other metals, and then I think it was really a splash at the beginning. We were on New York Times at the time actually, and I was on CBS News actually too. But we want to see that awareness thing to spread, to let more people know about it, because if you're gardening, you might be you're most likely to have some contaminated soil. You want to know how contaminated they are. What can you do about it? Yeah. So soil contamination in New York City, it's pretty serious, I have to say. I used to joke with people. I said everybody's backyard is a brownfield, and it is the truth actually. Although nobody really wants to acknowledge it. So especially some of the home gardens that are very contaminated. The reason is that people haven't done anything to it, and then there's the deposition from the air, from the deterioration of the walls. They have deposited a lot of this lead into the soil, and nobody touched it. And then now people want to start to do gardening. So that's where the most danger is. a lot of the community gardens are contaminated, but they're not as bad, in terms of the lead levels, for example. So it's very we call them heterogeneous, which means that you cannot really predict which garden is contaminated, which is not, depending on the specific situation.
So can you tell us a little bit about the sustainable resource management and what it is and how can you achieve your goal?
One of the example is solid waste. So we have food waste, we have a lot of these trash, for example, and historically these have been sent to landfills, and now we know that landfill is filled up, and then it takes a lot of energy or resources to transport these waste to other states to dump them, right? So all these things. So how do we manage the solid waste? We have to think creatively, doing recycling, be able to use some of the material. One of the things that we can do here is to incorporate food waste into the composting process, right? And the compost can be used as amendments for soils. They have nutrients, they have organics, they help the plants to grow. So we have a big need for urban gardeners, for example, to use this compost for agriculture purposes. So this is just one example of how to make some waste, for example, into something usable, right? There are many examples, gray water and biosolids, all these things. Food waste is one example that you can turn a waste into something useful. This is one example of how do you make the city more sustainable, right? You can do that through the management of the food waste that become useful resource.
Do you also tell your students about your research and how can students get involved?
I think it's really important to get the students involved of different levels. We have a lot of undergrad students and a lot of high school students actually. We're lined up for at least a dozen students actually in the summer now coming to do work. And there's some students of different programs. Some are from actually Cornell, some from Northeastern, from Washington, University of Washington. So there are students coming to the lab. We have interns in the lab, usually the undergrad or grad students actually doing the soil analysis, doing some research work. I have a bunch of students, postdocs, PhD students. And then the other aspect that we do have very strong connections with the community. So we do have people coming in, visit our lab, for example. We give them a little bit of lecture and give some training to how to look at the soils, what is a good soil, what is not a good soil. And then we have developing some training programs for some urban community groups, so they can do some of the testing on their own. So which is I think it's really interesting thing. I'm learning myself as to how to interact with the community to make things more useful for them.
In urban areas is that you have a lot of pavement, and the pavement is an impervious barrier, and because of that, when it rains, all the water that hits the surface runs off and goes into our sewers and our stormwater, and with it brings a lot of pollutants into the coastal systems. And so what green infrastructure does is it allows you to put these sponges in the landscape. So it's a natural system, so instead of the water moving over the landscape, it's going into the sponge. Okay, and so that's what typical green infrastructure is.
So what kind of research are you working on right now? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
We've taken the sponge and we've activated it so that we can control what happens in the sponge. So we can control where the water is in the soil and also maximize how plants can remove the pollutants from the water that's in the soil, and also increase how bacteria can decompose or degrade the pollutants that are in the stormwater. My invention that I have that was recently patented is called EcoWare technology. And so what my research group has been doing, amongst other stuff, is to try to get testbed studies to get testbed studies in the ground to show how the system works in situ, like in the landscape. So we have two systems going in. One is at Prospect Park to remove phosphorus from the water that's going into the lakes. And then the other one is going to be going into on campus here behind the guard shack on Bedford Avenue, so that we can do controlled studies and with different types of rain events and different types of pollutant loads, and we can tweak the system to see how best to maximize its performance here in New York City.
So do you tell your students about your research?
So I teach a Macaulay Honors class, and the Macaulay Honors class is focused on New York City stormwater and the different sewer sheds. And so I present to them the different ways that New York City is looking to try to offset stormwater and combined sewer overflow into our coastal waters. And I explain to them what I'm doing as one example of many. And then I also have taught about it when I taught the Intro to Urban Sustainability, and when I teach oceanography, and yeah, whenever I can kind of poke it in, I do.
Are any of your students involved in your research that you're doing right now?
So I do have several students. I have a graduate student right now who is working with mesocosm studies up in the greenhouse to look to see how our EcoWare system, she's funded through a NOAA CREST grant at City College. We're part of that as well. But we're looking to see how the EcoWare system can intercept septic flows in Long Island. So that's a collaboration that she's doing with us and also with NOAA. And I also have 2 other students who are going to be starting to work on the Prospect Park project, along with 2 students that Professor Branco has. And since I just got here in 2015, I'm still building up my lab, so I'm always looking for more students to work with me. And I'm always seeking funding so that I can support the students' research, because I know that it's expensive to live here in New York City. So not only do you guys need to be here and have opportunities to contribute your efforts, but it'd be good to be able to pay you guys to do it too. Our installation is going to be going in at the end of this summer, and we would love to have as many students on campus as possible. So we're going to build a really nice green infrastructure system right behind the guard shack. But hopefully, besides making a system that can help us polish the stormwater that goes into it, we really want to make it a place where people want to gather and to be part of, and also to demonstrate that green infrastructure doesn't need to be a bioswale or something that you set aside from people. I think right now, when people think about green infrastructure, they think about rain gardens or wetlands or bioswales that are on the side of the road, but actually green infrastructure can be integrated into the city in really easy and effective ways to create spaces where people want to gather, but also at the same time allow us to deal with our stormwater problems that we have.
So what's your advice to students that are seeking to find sustainable solutions now?
It's important to balance the quest for knowledge together with the applications that can be beneficial to society. And I think that's what sustainability is about. You know, it's kind of balancing the two. You know, some scientists are purely about curiosity-based research, and the research that I've done started off as curiosity-based research, but it certainly ended up in a place where it can be applied to offset some of the problems. I would encourage you guys to continue to find the solutions that are going to help solve our environmental problems, because you guys are our future, right?